Now, do you think the Obama administration and the president came in saying that he was going to change the culture of Washington? Do you think they've contributed to this sort of acid culture that we're seeing right now?
Most certainly they did. I mean, I think from the outset, it's the way in which they embarked on significant pieces of legislation, including the stimulus, which I ultimately worked on. But I think that crafting that bill, first in the House of Representatives, and in a way in which did not, include Republicans, and also diminishing the amount of spending that basically should have been part of the regular appropriations process, and that's where it got off track. And I know I recommended taking out $100 billion, which they did, based on a lot of Republican recommendations here in the Senate. And I took those recommendations and I submitted them to the president. I think the point is that the president is the leader. And I think that he can send the right message and set the right tone, especially at the outset during these consequential times, to invite people in and say, what can we do to craft the very best policies for America at this crucial time?
Do you think he stopped doing that because, there was some fanfare at the very beginning of the administration of sort of bringing folks over, and clearly you were on Rahm Emanuel, the Chief of Staff's speed dial for a significant period of time? Whether you enjoyed that or not, I don't know. Do you think that have you seen sort of a trailing off in their outreach to Republicans and to you in particular?
Well, I think overall that's true. It has diminished in that terms of outreach. It has to be aggressive outreach. I mean, after all, when the President of the United States calls, that means people, are prepared. Members of Congress are prepared to meet with the President, to sit down and to address these monumental issues during this very, consequential time in our country. I mean, these are unprecedented times when it comes to, the unemployment numbers, the pervasiveness of this, the depth of this recession, the longevity of this recession, the fact that we're not bouncing back with any kind of economic growth similar to, previous recessions. So yes, it did require, I think, a different kind of leadership in terms of that outreach. And it would have made the country better. It would have united the country rather than dividing the country. And, sure, everybody's accountable, both in the legislative branch and in the executive branch. The point is, we should be serving the public's interests. We should be serving America for the greater good. I mean, at this, most impossible time for most Americans is suffering under the weight of losing their jobs, a reduction in pay, or a reduction in the number of hours working. I mean, no family is untouched. I mean, more than 44% of the families in the country, are affected in some way with unemployment. That's staggering. And the persistence of this unemployment and low economic growth is certainly, I think, compounding the problems and the fear and the anxiety across America.
Well, the counter-argument the Democrats in the White House make, of course, is that Minority Leader Mitch McConnell has done an extraordinarily effective job of sort of holding his troops together. He encouraged you, I think it's no secret, during the stimulus debate, not to necessarily negotiate with the White House. Do you think that Senator McConnell and the Republican minority have played a role in sort of degrading the culture here?
Well, I don't know that the minority leader said, well, don't have those discussions. I was doing my job as a member of the Senate. I'm certainly cognizant and aware of what the minority leader would suggest, or what his position is on behalf of the conference or for most of the Republicans. I thought it was my responsibility to do the best I could on a piece of legislation that I thought, was compelling. I mean, that we needed to move this country forward. So you draft a stimulus bill, but then you had to do a number of other things in order to create economic growth through the private sector and creating the initiatives. That didn't happen. That's the unfortunate part because of all the other policies that ensued. But I think that what's happened in Washington is just coming down to either or, all my way or no way.
Do you think the Republicans share a responsibility right now in terms of that culture?
Well, I think that probably initially they could have been part of that process and figuring out a way. But, when the President of the United States is the President of the United States, he's one person, invite them, sit them down in the cabinet room, have that conversation. Now, I've served under 6 presidents and, been invited numerous times as part of a group, a strong bipartisan group, bring in the leadership, work with the leadership, just like the President was engaged in that summit that he convened on healthcare at the end, the tail end of the process. You have to do that at the forefront of the process, set the right tone.
How does this president compare to those 5 other presidents in terms of that inclusion?
Well, it's a very different, and I've had some great conversations with the president, but I think it needs to go beyond that in terms of embracing many people, many views, and trying to incorporate those views. I think what happened in this instance on some of the key issues is that they were crafted, by the leadership, and then it was very difficult to make a lot of the changes. You have to bring people in the forefront of the process. You either work through the committee process, so it's a transparent and accountable, or you work through a broad array of people with the leadership at the forefront, obviously, and you figure out what can be done. I mean, I've been there on many occasions with presidents, and I just think it's important to understand that in terms of building true bipartisan, consensus on the key issues. You're not going to get everything that you want, but you'll get, many of the things. And I think that that participation should have, been established at the outset in the way in which that legislation was crafted. In fact, I recommended the President Reagan's model. I know because I was part of those groups when he was trying to effect those budget cuts and tax cuts. It was very difficult because he had, Democratic Congress.
And you recommended the Reagan model to the president personally?
Yes, I did.
How did he respond to that?
Well, he appreciated it. Obviously, he probably had different views, but I thought it was an excellent model, and to build support within the Congress for certain ideas. And what did we do? We sat down, with members of the administration and cabinet and worked out budgets, and we worked through the process.